Okay, now, all right, now we're going, but we just have to wait for their students to come back. All right, sorry for the delay. Welcome to the Illinois Virtual College Exploration for Illinois Students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admissions Counseling. A few housekeeping things. You can use the Q&A button on the screen to type your questions to our presenters. Your camera and microphone are on, so the presenters cannot see or hear you. This is one of the many sessions happening. Make sure to check out the full schedule at IACAC.org. The presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website, IACAC.org. I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, and she will start.
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you very much. So my name's Jane, and I'm here from the University of Westminster, and I'm just going to talk you through, as I put, about studying in London and choosing Westminster. So I'm really happy that some of you have joined us today, and I hope that you can all hear me okay and it's all going all right. We've had a few technical issues and we may have some more. So just in case, if you are able to, I've tried to make it a bit interactive, but you can always ask the questions in the Q&A as well. But if you can go onto the Slido website and join the polls. It would be great if you're able to, and then I'll get a bit of information from you as well. Otherwise, we can try and do it through the Q&A afterwards. But if you're able to, go onto slido.com, maybe on your phone, on something else. And if you just use that code, it will take you straight in, and we're going to do some questions there. So as I say, just while you're doing that, I'm going to run through briefly why you can consider London as a study destination, especially if you're possibly looking out of state, but maybe you haven't considered overseas before, maybe you have. I'll talk through that. Why Westminster and what we offer, the subject areas, and then a little bit of information, although I think we'll probably have to keep it fairly short, about how the UK degree structure works and the education system, entry requirements and application process for the UK. But anything that I don't cover, you're welcome to ask, and if I can't get back in touch with you on the Q&A this evening, then I'll follow up afterwards for sure. But I am going to allow some time at the end for the questions. And I'm also just allowing a bit more time now in case you can join the quiz, if it works. So yeah, be great if you can do that. I'm just opening it as well. I'm not looking at my emails or anything on my phone, just so you know. So hopefully some of you are in there, and we'll get started on it. So. Just to start you off, if you are in, and if you're not, you can just play along at home. I'm wondering, I don't know, I know you're from all over state this afternoon, but have you got any idea how many people live in London? So you've got some multiple choice options there, and you've got a little bit of time to get the answer, hopefully. So, some of you, I don't know how many people managed to put on that one, you can still join, it's not too late, but there are about 9 million people live in London, just to get you started. It's a bit of a trick question because that's actually the metropolitan area, but central London itself and the city of London that you may know is one of the smallest cities in the world, but it's the bigger round area of the suburbs where a lot of people live. So it's really an average size, but it is a capital city. And it has been voted the best student city in the world. So it's not me telling you that it's a good option for your studies. It's actually all the students who've studied here. So it was ranked best student city, and that's based on everything really. So it's about the academics, but also about the life around that, the experience of being in London. So hopefully some of you might still be with me. And the next question in the slide is, which city do you think was voted in 2018? So it's all cities across the world that they ask and go for. I'll give you a few more seconds to answer. I'll just move on to the next slides while we do. So if you have answered that one, you've got another question, and that's about how many universities there are in London. So you can have a go at that. You may or may not know.
Hi,
Hello.
Jane.
Hello.
Right now we see a backdrop of the University of Westminster. We don't see
nothing else.
Slide deck.
Oh, okay. Might be only working for people who've got it on their phones, but it doesn't matter because I'll give you the answers. Thank you. Can you now see the screen? The 45 universities. Can you see that screen?
I just see the University of Westminster.
Oh, I wonder what's going on.
Students, if you see something different, can you put it into
Maybe we need
the Q&A, please?
It probably does. Let's just have a look. Maybe you haven't got the right screen. I'll try again. Thank you for telling me. So hopefully you're with me now.
Now I see
Okay,
your
I
presentation.
won't go back again. So if you don't, it doesn't matter. So in terms of so you didn't see any of the other slides before this?
No, now we see
Okay.
like
You can
how many
see
people live in.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
So we're talking about London being voted best student city in the world in 2019. I asked you which city you thought was voted top in 2018. Some of you have answered that. It was actually London again. There hasn't been a voting for 2020 for understandable reasons, but past 2 years in a row, London's been voted. So hopefully that means something. I think that Los Angeles did very well as well, but I'm afraid London was number one. And in terms of how many universities there are in London, and that's actually 40, but again, that's a little bit of a trick question because that's 40 universities based here, but a lot of universities have opened branches in London. So there are actually more than that now. So this is just really an introduction into thinking about, when you're thinking about your study and thinking about London, obviously people know the kind of the culture, the fun, maybe you visited as a tourist already. I'd normally be able to ask you that if it was interactive. But also thinking about the fact that you've got the breadth of choice if you're thinking about London as a study route. You've got a significant number of higher education institutions with really well-renowned reputations, great choice of programmes and courses. We'll come on to a little bit more of that in a minute. Massive student city, so 100,000 international students studying in London. And when we talk about that in a little more detail, you need to think about the benefits you get from that in terms of your experience, building up a network of contacts globally. Then looking at things like the support. Most London universities share library access. There are events and talks going on across all the campuses that you can visit and go to. And also on the slide there, when I was trying to research sort of options for London, you've got things like the British Library, which is actually the biggest library in the world. Number 2 comes in as the Library of Congress, but in terms of I think visits and resource size, it is actually still the British Library. So a lot of you will probably know obviously a lot about London already, but when you're thinking about your studies and choosing where to go, you are thinking about your career and your future as well, and you're thinking about skills that you can gain both within your programme, but also maybe in your spare time or extracurricular activities, and you're thinking about a career plan for the future. So London is still the financial capital of the world. A lot of change at the moment. Who knows what the future holds for us all? But we have a huge number of headquarters or international companies with major offices here. So when you're thinking about that exposure, opportunities for networking and talks, when industry speakers come in, opportunities for placements, and then for the future of your working career, then you think about that as well. If you want to be working part-time while you're studying, which you're able to on a Tier 4 visa, and some of you may have heard about the new graduate route that's going to allow graduates who finish their studies in the UK from next year to be able to apply to stay for 2 years and gain work experience, then London has got more jobs than anywhere else in the UK, and it's a capital of Europe in terms of most companies. Westminster itself is right in the heart of London. We're called the University of Westminster because of we sit within the borough of Westminster, which is an area of central London. And I'll show you a map in a minute about that, and you'll learn a bit more. But because of where we're located, we're really well placed for links to a variety of sectors and companies, and our students really benefit from that. Then we're thinking about London. I mean, really, when we're talking to students in the US, especially it depends where you're based throughout the state, you might say, hey, this isn't a big deal for me, but London's a truly global city. We've already mentioned it's a top international student destination, and a lot of our graduates actually say that one of the things, apart from their course and what they were doing, what they really valued after study was making contacts all over the world and having those links for the future for their careers as well. So it's way ahead maybe for you now thinking about that yet, but it's good to keep in mind. It's also about it being really welcoming. So London is a welcoming city, despite the maybe the thought of British people are quite quiet and cold. Maybe we are initially, but it is a very diverse, cosmopolitan place to come, and where there'll be students who are coming from different education backgrounds. I mean, Westminster itself is consistently ranked in the top of the world in terms of international outlook, international and global perspective of an institution. We have more than 165 different nationalities studying with us, and that really makes up for a real understanding of, when you're coming into the classroom, you're going to be studying with people from a variety of backgrounds, bringing in different experience and skills, and that's really useful. Also, in terms of our teaching staff, they're really used to teaching students from different education environments, and well adapted to that as well. So that's another important thing to keep in mind, really. Cultural social London, I possibly don't need to explain so much. A lot of, I know US students consider London as a study abroad destination based on kind of history or theatres, museums, galleries, and we have all of that, and it's fantastic. But London's actually, the centre of London is fairly small. So if you are coming and thinking about coming from a smaller town, I would say central London is really accessible. Transport's really easy, and it maybe doesn't compare to some of the big US cities when you've got that comparison. But we still have over 250 museums, lots of galleries, you've got the cinemas, theatre. In normal times, 5 airports, so you can come and go if you want to visit a European city for a weekend. It's a couple of hours if you want to go to Berlin, hour if you want to get to Paris, Amsterdam. So really well connected, and lots to do, and lots of free activities as well when you're a student in London. And all of these do fit into our subject areas as well, which I'm going to come on to a little bit more, but things like we do in museums and galleries MA, and that's taught in conjunction with some of the London museums, and you get classes on site. Same things like the cinema, which we'll come to in a second. So this is just another question. If you are on the side, if you're not, you might want to put it in the Q&A so I can get to it in a bit. But it'd be really good if there are specific subject areas you're interested in, if I could just get an idea of that, so that I can maybe tailor anything. Otherwise, I can answer questions about that afterwards. So I've started there, and hopefully you can answer, and I'll get some results through. I'll move on and come back to it in a second. So your subjects in London, we've talked about finance, it's financial capital. We've got more overseas banks than any other city, and it's still ranked as the biggest currency trading centre. So things like risk investment, if you're looking at those subject areas, you're interested in the accounting side, securities, great place to be. We've talked about the business. Media, the BBC is down the road from our Regent Street campus, and it's still the largest broadcaster in the world. We have a lot of international news bases with headquarters, with build offices in London, as well as all the UK headquarters, and obviously the history of media and communications in London and Fleet Street. If you're thinking about things like fashion, we're in one of the fashion capitals of the world. I've put a link on there. We've got specific fashion sites, and happy to answer any follow-up questions if any of you are interested in those areas. Music is another area Westminster does really well, and we do a lot of. Obviously, a lot of the big four are all US companies, but two of them have large offices in London, and we are the biggest music centre in terms of spend and revenue in Europe. You've got the new and the changes, but also the history of music. Westminster itself actually is where Pink Floyd formed. We were called the Polytechnic of London then, and they were all studying different subjects, but they formed with us. We had Jimi Hendrix show at our Portland Street lecture theatre, which is actually where our law school is today. And today we've got, I've put a link on there, our Spotify site. You can listen to some of our current and very much more recent graduates who hopefully you know, obviously UK based. A lot of them have made it in the States as well now. I think film production is a top area of ours. We actually have a cinema. We've got the Regent Street Cinema at the University of Westminster, which is home to British cinema and showed the first moving image film in Europe. And we have it back as a cinema today, and we use it for our film students. But London itself is third in the world for film production. Lots going on in the area of film and TV, really large growing industry, and great opportunities while you're with us. I'll move on fairly quickly because I think a lot of you aren't interested in these subjects. But tourism, what better place to learn than the cities that's the most visited tourist city in the world. Things like architecture, which is another of our big areas. If you don't know anything yet about architecture in the UK, definitely worth doing a little bit of research and starting to have a look around. But the Architects Registration Board, the ARB, is the professional body that oversees, the Royal British Institute oversees architecture in the UK, and it's very close to us, around the corner from our Baker Street site. You've got the architecture and the landscape of London. There's new as well as old. A lot of people think of the history, but there's a lot going on, and we've got a lot of variety of small and large architectural firms with really high global profiles, and a lot of big architectural festivals happen each year, including some that happen through in part at one of our campuses. So hopefully I convinced you that London's a good destination if you didn't know already. For you though, if you're coming from the US, you might say, well, hold on a second, all these things are great, but a lot of what you've told me I can get in the US as well. Of course it's true, but you know, London is a different city. You're getting an overseas experience as well. You're getting exposure to a new education system, and you're really getting that opportunity to be on the doorstep of Europe and really enjoy that life experience as well. And also, we'll come a bit further, programmes in the UK, bachelor's undergraduate courses are 3 years and masters are 1 year, so that can be a benefit for some. So this is just a map. You might not be familiar with it if you don't know London too well, but it's the centre of London, and it just shows some of the highlights. You might have visited and know some of these. Shame I can't ask you and find out, but if not, it shows 3 of our sites there as well and where we are. So that central area between those central sites of Marylebone, Cavendish and Regent, you can actually walk between those in about 15 minutes, and you could equally walk really across central London within half an hour, 40 minutes if you wanted to walk from Marylebone to the river. So you're not talking a huge area. And then really more focus on why Westminster, not just London. Well, we really try and use where we are. We were founded to teach Londoners professional skills. So we're still very much aimed at professional programmes, applied learning. And we really try and use our location to best effect and bring the benefits to you. So in terms of those industry talks going on, masterclasses from, you know, different areas coming in to do a chat with our students, you getting to do placements at great companies, going out and doing projects, all of this, and then just enjoying as well that kind of global welcome. So I have a feeling that this isn't working for lots of you. So I'm going to jump on and just assume that, in case, what level of study, but I'll go through both very briefly. These are our subject areas. So we've got 4 sites that you saw in the map, and we do a real range. So this is our life sciences campus, and that's biomedical sciences, biosciences, engineering, computer engineering, nutrition, sports, exercise science, those type of programs. We don't offer medicine, but we do offer a foundation route into medicine in partnership with the University of Malta, who you can continue on to if that's your desire and your route. But we focus a lot on the biomedical sciences or on the computing. In terms of our Regent Street campus, that's our original building. It's right in the centre of London. It's where we had that Regent Street cinema I mentioned. Very much your idea of a traditional British building. And this is where we have social sciences, which is really popular among US students. We do a lot of things like international relations, but also we do a lot of translation and interpreting, diplomacy. Our law school sits around the corner there. So we have a wide range of law specialist masters and undergraduate law programs. I didn't mention things like law, social sciences in terms of why study in London, because I think that's kind of a lot more obvious about why people choose those based on the history or the exposure of being in London. I've mentioned our museums and gallery studies and lots of other niche programs in that area as well. Then you've got our Marylebone campus, very different, very modern, right in the centre opposite Baker Street station. You might know Baker Street because of Sherlock Holmes. It's quite a busy area and it's our biggest campus. And this is where we have split through the business school, where we're very well known for marketing. Also, we do a lot of specialist areas and we do a broad range of business and finance courses. I mentioned, you know, the innovation and the technology of London. We're offering FinTech as a programme now. Also things like sustainability and innovation in business, and lots of entrepreneurship business programmes. So lots of changes and new courses. We have our architecture and interiors department here too. Some really great graduates from this course. Good idea to have a look at our web pages if you're interested. There's lots of examples of student work, which is really the best way to get an idea about each programme. We do a lot of the tourism, conference events, transport, and then things like designing cities, urban planning and those areas as well. Different again, our Harrow campus. This is the one that's in North London. It's about 25 minutes from the centre on the subway, which everybody uses in London. So not far out, but it's much more like a campus. There's accommodation on site here as well, sports centres, everything is there. At each of our sites, there are student union facilities, library, social activities, a cafe or restaurant. You can use all of them, but you don't need to travel between them normally. So you're very much based on the site that you're studying at. And this is where we also do all the art and design, music, photography, and a lot of journalism communications, which we're really well known for. So that's just in case you didn't recognise the other map and you wanted a little bit more information in terms of where we are. Hopefully that helps to base you, but you can see it's really easy in terms of the central area for getting around in London. So this is just a few minutes I will spend before we go into questions about the subject, how the structure works. So as I mentioned, bachelor's programmes are 3 years in the UK. So that, and they're named in a slightly different way. There are some examples at the bottom there. You can't generally choose a broad range of courses. You have to specialise a lot more. That works really well for people who know what they want to do. If you're not sure, there are options to choose combined degrees or joint honours where you get to do half and half. But it's not as open as the US system because people do specialise from really year 10 in their subject areas and narrow that down. benefits, it's 3 years of study, that's cheaper. You can do 4 years if you want to do a work placement. So just so you see an example of how it would work here, a lot of people, we offer a work placement or a year abroad for a third destination if you'd like. So you can do 4 years, but it's only 3 years of study. So it's only 3 years of full fees, if you're thinking about it like that. And that's just the structure of a degree program, but we'll send all of this out afterwards, and if you've got questions you can contact me because we're running slightly out of time on this. So masters and 1 year programs in the UK. There are some 2 year courses which will combine an internship and placement, but the studies will be 1 year. So it's a great option in terms of progressing your career quickly if you want to specialise in an area, and it's also more affordable when you're thinking about that 1 year program. So we split into 2 semesters and a dissertation research period. And it's worth mentioning as well, we have masters starting in September and in January. With undergraduate programs, it's always September that they start usually. So just briefly on the application, if you haven't heard it, you haven't looked yet, don't worry. It's plenty of time to look, but the UK and the University of Westminster uses UCAS, which is the University and College Admission System service. So everybody applies. It's a bit like using Common App. You will see UK universities on Common App as well, but they normally end up having to filter the programs through UCAS too. So don't worry, have a look at the UCAS site that's at the bottom there if you're thinking about applying to the UK. It's actually a really straightforward system once you get started. You get 5 choices of courses, all 5 universities. So it opens each year in October. You get to apply, submit your application for, so you might choose 3 programs at different universities and then 2 at the same. So you might choose to apply for the University of Westminster for photography and graphic design. So that will count as 2 of your choices, but everybody gets 5 choices, and you get up to the 15th of January to apply. Now this changes slightly. There are a couple of so if you're applying for veterinary courses, medical programs, or Oxford and Cambridge, there is a different deadline. It's a much earlier deadline of October, but generally, and definitely for Westminster, the deadline for everybody is the 15th of January. After that date, we can keep considering international applicants. So if you're an international applicant not going through sort of UK school system, if you're based in the US, you can actually apply at any point, but the courses may fill up through the spring. So it's a good idea if you can to apply and submit your application in the fall. If you're applying to US institutions and you want to consider it as an option, you can do both. And then you would get your offers from universities. So the universities will each look at your application and then make offers to you, and then you go on to make a decision about what you want to do after that. Works a bit differently, and it's 1 application. So it's worth remembering that for the UK, that statement that you're doing, that goes to all of your institutions that you applied for. So you keep it about your subject area, and we focus very much on the academic side, the skills you have, your plans for the subject area, your interest and motivation for what you're doing with that course, and a lot less on the kind of general life and personal experiences. But there's lots of support about writing a UCAS statement. We have a support service for UCAS statements, so if you are going to go through it, maybe in the, maybe this year, maybe next, then just get in touch then. But just for now, have a look at ucas.com to get an idea. If you are looking to apply for this year, then there's a small caveat to this. These are our general undergraduate requirements. It will always tell you on a course page if there's specific requirements for a subject area or any additional thing needed, like a portfolio or anything like that will always be stated. This is what we normally look for: high school GPA of above 3. We do normally ask, because of the education system difference, because we do 13 years in the UK, the US is normally 11, 12, we do normally ask for additional tests to try and balance that gap. However, with exams not taking place, with the situation being unknown for the next 6-12 months, we are accepting students without those, and we're trying to look at your subject area specific grades, teacher references instead. If you're not getting grades and you're not at school and your school changes to pass rather than giving you grades, just get in touch. We're trying to be as flexible as we can and understand that. If you're looking at postgraduate programmes, it's the same really. It's a slightly different system, but it's the UCAS PG application. And again, there's no, you just apply, you can actually apply for as many courses as you like, keep it within reason, of course. And it's the same things really. You'll include your transcripts, a statement about why you want to do the programme, and references, and also if you have it, work experience in a resume. And we do look, especially students that might have graduated a few years ago, we'll look at work experience in combination if you had slightly lower grades. But we normally look for postgraduate for at least a 2.8 GPA minimum from a recognised degree in the US. Some courses ask for a little bit higher, but as I say, we'll look at work experience as well. And happy to try and take things into consideration if you didn't get your transcripts this year or had a lower grade because of the COVID circumstances. So I think I'm going to stop there just to allow a few minutes for questions. I'll just leave the information about the fees up so you know, and they're all on our website. I wanted to cover that London's not the most expensive city in the world anymore. If you're thinking about studies out of state, it can work out fairly well to think about the UK. If you're staying in state and you're thinking maybe transfer, we look at transfer applications as well if you wanted to gain that experience a bit later, or maybe think about a master's where it's only 1 year later on. Also we do study abroad semesters and summer school, but those are the kind of prices at the moment, and we are recognised for federal loans. And we've got more information about that on our site, and also a specialist US loans team. We also have a scholarship site. We have one of the biggest scholarship programs in the UK. They're academic based and need based scholarships, so we don't really do sports scholarships, but lots of information about that, and we can send you through the links to that afterwards. So this is just about kind of pricing, accommodation. If you're happy to live in university halls, you get discounts on your travel, free activities in London. You can really look at a good budget for studying in the UK. But of course, if you're going to live in private accommodation, eat out in restaurants, live in central London, then you could spend an awful lot of money as well. So thank you very much. And now it's hoping I will be able to see if we've got any questions. And if you haven't got any, now is the time that you're welcome to ask them. And while you're asking and thinking, I will just put my contact details up if I can, in case you'd prefer, we'll come back to that one, in case you'd prefer to get in touch later and ask something a bit later on. And you've got all the links to our social media there as well. Take a look. We've got some international student blogs, lots of students talking about experiences, a couple of American students talking all about their personal experience. And we also have a lot of virtual events this year, so lots of sessions with tutors doing webinars and virtual open days. So welcome to join us and come and have a look around. The next one is on the 10th of October, and you can site. You can to apply postgraduate and UCAS postgraduate charges around 20 Sorry, I lost you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. The students are all gone. Thank you for the session. I'm going to end the recording now. Looks like you're having some Wi-Fi issues. Thank you.